Hi, this is Scott with 4D Tech. Today we are in a 1314 body style F-150 that came equipped with a 4-inch screen. We will be showing you how to install our complete plug-and-play, custom programmed 4-inch to 8-inch conversion for Sync 2 in this vehicle. Everything you see installed in this vehicle today comes in the complete plug-and-play kit from 4dtech.com. To perform this install, we need a few basic tools. A 7mm nut driver, some plastic dash removal tools, a 7mm socket on a small ratchet, and a 10mm socket on an extension. You may also need an 8mm in place of the 10mm depending on your vehicle. Let's get started. First, we need to start over on the passenger side of the vehicle. We need to remove the airbag cover and slide it out of the way to gain access to screws on this side of this panel. We will not be completely removing the airbag, and we won't be affecting the airbag in any way, just simply moving it out of the way. In order to do this, we need to drop down the glove box, squeeze the sides to get past these pegs, and drop it down, and we need to remove the bolts from underneath that hold the airbag cover. These are the 3 bolts that need to be removed in order to slide the airbag out of the way. We'll remove them with a 10mm socket. In some vehicles, this may be an 8mm instead. With those bolts removed, we need to then pop this cover off so we can slide it out of the way. We'll take one of our dash removal tools and start getting underneath the cover and work our way around. With the cover loose, we'll slide it aside enough to expose this 7mm screw, and then we'll take that out as well. With that screw out, we'll then need to remove this trim panel on this side of the bezel to gain access to the bezel. We'll carefully pry up on the panel and start to unclip it from the vehicle. With the panel unclipped, we'll unplug the power outlet and move the panel out of the way. On this side, we just need to rotate this panel out of the way to gain access to a screw there. We're not going to completely remove it. We just need to get underneath the edge. It may be better to start from the bottom to get a little bit of a gap to work our way up. And we basically just need enough room to get to this screw right here. Next, we'll take those 2 screws out at the top of the bezel. These 2 tabs do not exist on the new bezel, so you don't have to worry about putting those screws back in behind that panel. There are 2 more screws here at the bottom corner of each side that need to come out as well. If you can't get your nut driver in there, you may need to use the 7mm socket instead. Now, if you have a full-length center console that touches the dash, there are instructions in the manual that comes with the kit on how to loosen up that console, because it just needs to slide back a little bit. And then there's 2 screws at the bottoms of these panels. When there's a console, 2 7mm right on the front. and then the rest of the process is exactly the same from there. With those screws removed, we can pop this radio bezel off of the dash. And then we just need to disconnect this single connector down here by pushing the tab on the bottom. And we'll set this aside as it'll no longer be needed. Next, we'll need to gain access to behind the screen and the audio control module as well. We'll be removing the screen and we need to get behind here to run some cables. So we'll take out all 8 of these screws here. With those screws out, first we'll remove the screen, and there's a connector on the back of it. We squeeze the clip there and unplug it. And we'll set that out of the way. Next, we'll pull the audio control module out, which is the CD player, and we'll unplug that just to get it out of the way for now, but we will be reusing it. So these antenna connectors here, you squeeze them with your thumb to unplug them, and then the connector, same thing, clip is on the top, and unplug those as well. We need to remove where the USB jack is because we'll be replacing that with a hub for the upgrade. There is a little spot you can get underneath it to pry forward to get it out. And then to unplug it, this little connector here, the wiring's kind of tight, has a clip on the side of it to unplug it. And then the USB cable here that's, you'll open the tabs on the top and bottom and then pull out. These connectors will not be reused as we'll be rerouting new cables. Next, we need to remove this cover on the top of the dash to gain access to some stuff underneath there as well. So we'll remove the 2 7mm screws underneath the rubber tray. With those 2 screws out, you lift towards the windshield first and then slide the tray towards the windshield and then out of the way. Next, we need to route the cables for the upgrade. We'll take our main conversion harness here. This is the custom conversion harness from 4D Tech, and show you how to route this. It's all plug and play. This connector with this lever lock will end up behind the screen. There's a little lock on the lever lock there, and you push and open the lever in order to connect it. So we'll get that opened up now. So this smaller T harness and this large connector need to get routed up into this hole. So if we go on this side of on the outside of the metal bracket and route up through, and we'll pull both of those harnesses up through. And we'll connect those in a few minutes. This harness here gets teed in to one of the connector in the middle of the ACM. So these were plugged into the ACM. We'll plug this one in now. This cable, along with the included USB cable, gets routed down to the hub. So we'll pass that down through. And through the hub opening. If you had the center console, then that plate was inside the center console. We'll include long enough cables to reach the way back. The plate still comes off the same way. You'll still need to route your cables to that hole just the same. If you have a 14 and you had a rear view camera that displayed on the 4-inch screen, you'll use this little harness that was included in the kit. Plug it into the yellow connector that was on the main harness we just installed. And then the connector that was plugged into the 4-inch screen will plug into that harness. And we'll tuck that out of the way. Next, since we no longer need the ACM out, now that we have the cables routed, we'll reinstall that. The new T-harness will plug into the back, the existing connector as well, and then the 2 antenna connectors. You'll want to make sure that the big main connector and the USB cable that you ran are up above the ACM when you put it back in the opening, and that there's no cables caught behind the bracket of the ACM. There's a rubber nub that goes in this oval right there, and once that's lined up, then the screw holes will line up for the ACM, and we can replace those 4 screws we took out earlier. Next, we'll go over the connections of the cables we ran from the main harness up into this compartment below the tray on the top of the dash. So we got this large main black connector here. What we're going to do is there's this black module here with this large connector with the gray lever lock. So we'll push the little tab in front of the gray lever lock with our finger, push the gray lever lock all the way over, unplug that connector, and then it gets plugged into the connector from the main harness that we ran up. It will only plug in one way, so don't worry about plugging it in the wrong way. We push it in till the gray lever starts to move, and then push the gray lever the rest of the way to lock it in. This small T-harness that we ran up, what we do is we grab this silver tab right here, and there's a module attached to it. Unplug this connector off the module. There's a tab on this end of the connector. Plug that connector into our T-harness, and then plug the other side of our T-harness back into that module. And then we'll take that module and clip it back in where we found it. With all the cabling routed, next we need to install our Sync 2 touchscreen system. This will come pre-assembled with the touchscreen, the control module, and the custom brackets on it. You do not need to install any sort of antenna for the Sync 2 upgrade. It will reuse the GPSM module that already exists in the vehicle that Sync 1 used for systems like 911 Assist and the Compass. To install this, we'll take the main connector, make sure the lever lock is all the way open, push it into the back of the unit till the lever lock starts to move, and clip it till it locks. Take this USB cable with the clip pointing up and plug it into the black jack on the back of there. Some systems may have a light gray jack. You'll plug into the black jack. The light gray doesn't do anything. It's keyed differently, so it will not plug in. Next, we'll put the screen in place and replace the 4 silver screws we took out earlier. With those screws replaced, next we need to install the Sync 2 hub that comes with the kit down in the opening. Since the opening is larger than the hub, it comes with this adapter plate. You'll slide the hub in. It's only keyed to fit one way. And then we'll connect this up down here. The power connector plugs into this flat connector here with the clip facing outward, and the connector diagonal from it is where you plug in this cable. The cable will only plug into one of those two connectors, so don't worry about mixing it up. The SD card slot points down, and you slide it in the opening. Since we're installing the navigation equipped unit, we need to insert the map SD card with the writing up into the slot until it's flush and it clicks. Next, we'll replace the cover up on top of the dash, as that no longer needs to be open. And that was 2 of the black screws. With the screws replaced, we'll put the rubber mat back in place. Next, we need to install the new 8-inch bezel that comes with the kit. This opening will be here, since there's a variety of switches that can be in that location depending on how your vehicle was trimmed out. So we'll need to remove the switches from the original 4-inch bezel and put them in the 8-inch bezel. We can simply do that by going to the back side of the switch, squeezing the ends, and pushing it out the front. And then we'll take those switches and slide them in the new radio bezel. Then the bezel gets connected with this connector down here with the clip facing down. Push it in until it clicks, and then reconnect the switches up here as well. It's kind of tight, but there's a clip. The clip on the end of the connector faces towards the driver's side. And then we'll put this bezel in place. As we stated earlier, there are no upper tabs on the 8-inch bezel, so you don't have to worry about getting those underneath the panel. With the bezel in place, we'll put the 2 black screws in the bottom edge of the bezel where we took them out earlier. With those screws in, we'll snap this driver's side panel back in place, and then replace the passenger side panel as well. Make sure to plug the power point back in. There was a light colored, very coarse thread, a little bit heavier thread screw than the rest, that held this panel in, and you'll just want to replace that. And now we'll come around to the passenger side and replace the airbag. There's 2 black hooks that hook underneath the metal plate where the bolts go through. With those hooks aligned, we'll just push this back in place. And then replace the 3 screws we took out earlier from underneath. And with those 3 bolts tightened, we just squeeze the sides of the glove box and put that back in place. Next, we need to run the couple programmers that come with the kit. As described before, the equipment that's shipped in the conversion is pre-programmed with the custom programming for your vehicle before it leaves 4D Tech. These programmers then make changes to the vehicle to accept the conversion. These 2 programmers one comes with a pigtail on it and one does not. The one that needs the pigtail will already have it connected to it. The other one, you do not use the pigtail. You can run these programmers in any order as long as you run both. We will run the one with the pigtail first, but we need to turn on the ignition to run the programmers. With the ignition on, we'll plug the pigtail into the diagnostic connector underneath the driver's side dash and monitor the lights on the programmer. The lights will blink blue as it's programming the vehicle. Once the programmer turns green, the programming is complete and it can be removed. And then we'll run the next programmer that does not have the pigtail. We'll plug that one in and monitor the lights the same way. During programming, it's completely normal for modules to reset in the vehicle, including the audio. And you may hear a popping through the speakers when that happens. Once the light turns green, the programming is complete on this programmer as well. You may remove the programmer and set both aside. With the new Sync 2 system installed, we'll now fire up the new system. Since we installed the navigation version, we'll have the navigation functions up here in the right-hand corner. So you see we now have our mapping. With this bezel, you gain automatic climate controls, but it's single zone automatic climate, which means that the driver's side controls will control the temperature for the entire vehicle, but you can't split it driver to passenger side separately because it lacks the sensors and damper doors in the vehicle to do so. So with that auto climate control single zone, you gain the climate control screen here as well. Now you see how to install the 4-inch to 8-inch Sync 2 conversion plug and play custom programmed from 4D Tech in this vehicle. I'm Scott. Thank you for checking out our video.